Minutes. But we're going to start the hour with public safety news out of St. Paul, capital city. On Tuesday, police released video of the fatal shooting earlier this month by a St. Paul police officer of 31-year-old Ronald Davis in the city's Midway neighborhood. Now, the video shows Davis charging at police officer Stephen Matson, holding what appears to be a knife. Matson is heard telling Davis to drop the knife before he fired the fatal shots. Later Tuesday night, a man was murdered on the city's east side. It was the 21st homicide this year and the 7th this month. St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter and Police Chief Todd Extel have come up with a plan they say will help curb gun violence. Here to talk about that plan and this week's events is St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. Welcome back to Almanac.
Thanks for having me on.
We're going to start with the community meeting, which was last night in St. Paul. And there were a number of people there. One person said, this is happening so much we're almost numb to it, which should not happen.
Which should never happen.
What is going on in St. Paul?
You know, that's an important question, and I appreciate you starting there because that's where we have to center our questions, is what is going on and why is it happening? We know that violence is the result of people feeling isolated and people feeling desperate for social reasons, for economic reasons, for health and mental health reasons, and a whole number of other types of things. And that means that our response to that has to address those underlying challenges. And so, you know, that's what we're doing. The other thing that we know is that violence acts in many ways like a public health epidemic. And that when you have one incident of violence, that more incidences of violence are more likely to occur because of it.
A couple of things that came up at the meeting. One was that witnesses apparently are afraid to come forward because they don't want to be the subject of retaliation from gang members. And O'Shea Israel, who's been in the criminal justice system, he said, and I think this is a quote, that we must dispel the notion among some youth that committing a violent crime is a rite of passage. What about those two things? How can you address those?
You know, again, this goes right back to investing in our community. Far too much over the last few weeks. I've spent time with families that are in mourning and neighbors who are in shock. And, you know, that shock is better than what you just described, as people sort of getting numb to that. But what I hear them say is, we need a new way. We need a new approach. We need to do something different in our community so that we have the type of community where every 15-year-old, every teenager has something better to do, has something more productive to do than to pick up a gun or get involved in the wrong activity. And that's why our focus has been on increasing patrols and increasing building this investigative task force that the chief and I announced to both help follow up on those incidences and put the people who are responsible behind bars, while saying we're going to invest in our community, we're going to invest in our young people, we're going to invest to create jobs, to do all of those things that impact those core causes of violence in the first place.
Now, what do we know about all these murders? Are they connected? Is it gang violence in St. Paul that's behind some of this?
You know, our police department is following up on that closely. They've got a number of those suspects in custody already, and so, you know, that's really good, fast work by our department. And so, you know, we'll continue to learn more about some of those events. Not all the information is public anyways yet, but we'll continue to learn more about those events. Oftentimes, you know, some of this activity has been group related, and some of that, you know, like I said before, you know, when one violent act, you know, makes another violent act more and more likely. That's why we have to intervene. That's why we have to interrupt. That's why we have to take that kind of public health approach that I was talking about earlier to help stop that cycle from reoccurring.
Timing is everything in politics and government. I wonder if politically, with the public's mood, can you at this time get a 5 active duty officer reduction out of your St. Paul Police Department as you've requested in your budget document?
That's an important question, and the truth is we are not requesting or proposing reducing police officers. When I came in my first budget, we approved a 9-officer increase. Right now, we have a lot of economic uncertainty. We have a forecasted downturn. We have enormous needs in our streets, and we have an upcoming vote on trash. And so my proposal scales back the increase from 9 additional officers to 4 additional officers. Either way, it'll be more officers than we've ever seen patrolling the streets of our city.
Let me ask you about the video that was made available earlier this week where, as I mentioned in my introduction, the officer shot and killed the suspect. Did you have reservations to releasing that video so early in the process?
Not at all. Last year, when we had an unfortunate incident of the same nature, the test that I created last year was to say we want to have an investigation that's thorough, timely, and transparent, and we know that those three can all be done at the same time. Our law enforcement partners have said they need the opportunity to get the kind of preliminary statements from witnesses before they release the video, and so we've said once we get those preliminary statements and once, out of respect for the family has had a chance to view that video, then let's release it to the public so that we can dispel any rumors, so that we can dispel any kind of negative kind of assumptions going on in community and get to the bottom of what happened right away so that we can continue with the healing process.
There's still some negativity, though. Obviously, the activists came out and said, look, we think there could have been more to de-escalate the situation that occurred that day, and they were pretty harsh in terms of their comments. What do you make of that?
You know, one of the things that you learn early on as mayor is that an officer-involved shooting is one of the most traumatic things that a city can go through.
We should mention, of course, that your family is a law enforcement family.
Of course. And I grew up, praying for the safety of our police officers, praying for the safety of our city every single day. In addition to the loss of life that we mourn, in addition to the trauma of hearing shots fired in the neighborhood, it also brings us back face to face with the historic trauma and pain that for too often has defined the relationship, particularly between communities of color and our police officers. And so, that pain that they're speaking of continues to be real. That pain continues to be something that's real. And just like any relationship, the work of trust building is never done. So it's an opportunity for our chief, it's an opportunity for our leadership, and it's an opportunity for me and every officer in our department to continue to double down on that trust building and that confidence building that makes our city so special in the first place.
We'll be watching. Appreciate you coming over, Mayor. Thanks.
Thanks for having me
on.
on.
All the best.
Good to see you.
Thanks.